Good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year. I wish everyone a great and prosperous 2022. Originally, I was not going to record my third book in my series in audio format, but I changed my mind. The Last Admiral, Part 3 of my saga, the Duaredheim Staff Saga, is a prequel to Cur's Rage and the Drums of Doom, the two books that come before it. You could read this one as a standalone before it. If you didn't want to read the rest of the series and enjoy it, it has a noteworthy ending that's satisfying and doesn't compel you to read on. But I hope that you do. This is my first edition cover of my own design. It's a self-portrait. The organ is symbolic of the lead character, Aklon, who's Vlad Lucheron's father, is a supreme organist. In the corners, there are images of small owls. That symbolizes the evil Queen Afra of Dragonia, who enjoys transforming into a giant owl in certain parts of the book. Okay. The back of the book is another illustration from one of the scenes in the book. There's a few illustrations inside. This is my first edition. When I went with Stratton Press, we changed the design to something a little more dynamic because this is all about Aklon's last battle. He was an admiral in the Dragonian Navy. His fleet gets set up, and he's in the fight of his life at the end of the book. It's a very long but very exciting and satisfying naval battle, in my opinion, at the end of the book. It won't leave you wanting more. You should feel satisfied by the story. Okay. And the back cover, normal. Alright, without ado, let's see what we got here. Okay. My notable editors are my best friend Tommy Magazoo, my mother, who recently passed away, Lucia, and Angela James of Stratton Press did an excellent job of the final editing of this format, the second edition of The Last Admiral. Okay. This book is dedicated to Joe Garside, one of my great friends and brother. Joe passed away suddenly while working in China. He loved life and lived it to the fullest. Joe was sorely missed by his many friends and family. That was written by his brother, Matthew J. Garside. Joe was a great friend in my youth. We had so many adventures together. He died sort of tragically in China. Okay. But you're going to get to see Joe in the book. He lives on forever within the pages of this book. Okay, this is the third book of the Duaredheim Staff series, and although it belongs in its place sequentially, it is in fact a prequel to the events portrayed in Part 1, Cur's Rage. The Last Admiral describes the climactic events leading up to Aklon's fateful end during the Battle of Eitzel and the effects that it had on his family and his fleet. I give my sincerest appreciation and thanks to the Vietnamese community of Dorchester, Massachusetts. My experience in learning their culture, their language, and their martial art have changed my life and are the inspiration behind the culture of the island people of Shang Tsung as portrayed in this work. Without ado, The Last Admiral. Okay. There's a lot of footnotes in The Last Admiral. I'm not going to read the footnotes. The footnotes may help some people who aren't familiar with some of the more lesser-known terminology. I had to do a lot of research for this book. So words that I didn't think would be in common knowledge, I footnoted. If you don't need the footnotes, you don't need to read them. Okay. Aklon's fingers navigated the ivory keys of his tracker pipe organ with tactical precision. Assembled by the most skilled artisans, he had spared no expense in its construction. He needed no calcant to work the bellows for him, because he had made ingenious use of the brook that ran behind his manor. Through a complex system of water wheels and other hydraulic systems, he was able to achieve an inexhaustible supply of wind to power his instrument. Select Shattered Isles hardwoods comprised its carved frame and console. Shaped likenesses of the great dragons adorned its legs and corners, and mythical heroes battled on every panel of its walls. The keys were polished ivory with gold filigrees, and unlike standard instruments, 7 manuals faced the organist. Candelabra adorned its shelves, their candles' flames banishing the shadows and illuminating the stained glass windows of the hall in a wonderful symphony of light and brilliant color. Aklon's pipe organ was the crowning achievement of many years of hard labor and procurement. It was a flawless, priceless masterpiece. The organ casing was a slightly raised, domed enclosure that housed the instrument and its silver pipes. A few steps, expertly carpeted, descended into the grand ballroom, built with round walls and a cathedral ceiling of granite and polished marble. Massive exposed beams supported the roof and framed the enclosure's windows, each one a masterwork of colored glass. The acoustic qualities of the room were flawless, and listeners heard the same intensity of sound throughout the hall. The center of the chamber housed a garden and streaming fountain, complete with waterfalls and goldfish pools ringed with stone and cultivated with lily pads. It had been his wife's favorite place in the entire world. Each day that he was home, he played for her, but such days were increasingly rare, as the Queen frequently called upon the services of his armada in the most dangerous missions. The organ was his, but the ballroom, amphitheater, and the music that he played was Katora's, and he believed with all his soul that she was still with him when he played. In the days when their lives and their love was at its peak, she was always there when he performed, listening, laughing, and endlessly encouraging him to greater efforts. When he listened closely, he could still hear her voice, soft and tinkling, like wind chimes. He had barely completed Ardomio's Symphony in D major when a messenger arrived. "My apologies, Admiral," the page said, "but I bring a message of great importance." "Bring it to me at once." Rising carefully from his seat, Aklon was a commanding figure. Tall, lean, and square-shouldered, his face was hawkish like his son's and his father's before him. His hair was black and streaked with gray on the sides. His ears were elegant, pointed, and perfect. His eyes were as blue as the sky over the summer sea, haunted by loneliness, yet hopeful. His mouth was infinitely expressive, taught with the discipline of a career soldier, but still prone to smile. Off duty, his dress was casual, a plain gray tunic over baggy pants and smooth-soled shoes. With effortless grace, he descended the stairs and met the page. "At ease," he ordered. "I come from High Command, Admiral." Extending his hand, he delivered the scroll, sealed in wax and marked with the signet ring of the Supreme Commander. Creasing it with his thumbnail, Aklon opened it. "You are free to go, sailor. I was commanded to wait until you deliver a time frame, sir." "Indeed." He smiled, but it was not a happy one. From S.C. Jorgen Brigantine, Naval High Command, Shangsun, Dragonia. To Aklon Lucheron, Admiral, 11th Fleet Commanding, Centurio Domus, Shangsun Province, Dragonia. Admiral, the 11th Fleet will escort the 3rd Merchantman's Armada in support of the Shattered Isles campaign. Muster and embark as soon as possible with exactly half of your force to rendezvous with the 3rd Merchantman's Armada at latitude 22 degrees north and east longitude 26 degrees within 3 days' time. Your remaining force shall remain in port in defense of Shangsun until further notice. Conduct your muster with the utmost secrecy and speed, as the 3rd Merchantman's Armada carries supplies urgently needed by our ground forces fighting on the island of Zamoa. Detailed orders are awaiting you at the rally point. Sincerely, Jorgen Brigantine, Supreme Commander, the Queen's Navy. A myriad of thoughts passed through his mind, some of them fearful. The Queen had never divided his force in half before. He suspected that he knew what it meant, and it raised his ire. Orders in hand, he rolled them closed and squeezed. Inform High Command that the 11th shall reach the rendezvous point in 2 days. Aye, sir, he replied. Snapping a crisp salute, Aklon returned it with equal vigor. Turning about face in a well-executed maneuver, Wraith, the butler, quickly escorted him to the door. He may have shorted himself by not accepting the 3rd day penned in his orders, but if things were as he believed, he did not want to give his enemies any extra time to use against him. Wraith, he directed, send for my runners. Tell them to report to me on the double. Right away, sir, he replied. Just one more thing, sir. Of course, Aklon said. A letter just arrived for the young master, sir. It's from the Academy. Deliver it, and inform Vlad that I wish to see him in the great room at noon. I'll see to it, sir. Very well, Aklon replied. The great room. The great room lay adjacent to the ballroom gardens and formed the west and rear of the mansion. Aklon met with friends and guests, as well as dignitaries there. It was as beautiful in its extravagance as the ballroom was in its sparse opulence. In his youth, Aklon had enjoyed hunting all manner of wild beasts, and the heads of lions, fine deer, and great tusked boars hung on its walls. The furnishings were all well cared and upholstered, and comfortable far beyond the norm. Large windows let in copious amounts of light, and exotic rugs carpeted much of the floor. The dining table was the signature piece of the room. Occupying the center of the chamber, it had ample space for 30 guests. Aklon sat at the table's head, pondering on the events that were now transpiring. Gazing at the lion's feet of the table's legs, he contrived a plan to survive the coming storm. His own chances of success and survival were slim, but his son had a chance. Parchment of fine quality, pens, and a deep inkwell stood ready at the end of the table. Preparing his last wishes, he compiled them in writing for his son, stepson, and the other residents of the estate. Last will and testament of Aklon Lusharon, to whom this may concern. Admiral Aklon Lusharon, Naval Service Number 392179, of the Dragonian province of Shang-Sun, declare that I am the commander of the 11th Armada in her Queen's Navy, and that I am currently residing at Centurio Domus, northern Shang-Sun. According to her Queen's orders, I declare that this is my last will and testament, and that I revoke all other wills and codicils previously made by me. First, I appoint my butler, Wraith Vertorier, as my personal representative concerning this will. If my butler, Wraith Vertorier, is unable or fails to serve, I then appoint my son, Vlad Lusharon, to serve as my personal representative. I request my personal representative to be permitted to serve without bond or surety thereon, and without the intervention of any court except as required by parliamentary law. I direct that my personal representative act in unsupervised administration, to manage my estate with minimal court supervision. If it becomes necessary to manage my estate in any jurisdiction where my personal representative is unable to do so, I authorize my personal representative to appoint a temporary representative in writing. B. I direct my personal representative to pay the expenses of past illnesses and the costs of a funeral appropriate to my station. I grant my personal representative the power to extend or renew any debt for such time as my personal representative shall deem appropriate. C. The principal of my estate shall pay all estate, inheritance, succession, and other death taxes with respect to all property passing under this will, and my personal representative may pay such taxes at any time deemed advisable. D. I request my personal representative to settle my estate as soon after my death as is practicable, and to pay or deliver every legacy or bequest to my beneficiaries immediately. E. I may leave a letter of intent with the executed copy of this will for guiding my personal representative. I request, but do not require, that my personal representative honor my wishes expressed therein. Okay, we're going to stop here just because the video will become overly long for YouTube. And we'll start off. I know the will part is a little bit ponderous, but you'll see why it becomes important as the book progresses. Trust me, it may be a little bit boring for the first few pages, but it won't last. The boring part won't last long. Okay, Happy New Year, everyone, and we will start off on page 14 next time with the second portion of Aklon's will. All right, Happy New Year. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day. Bye-bye.